Yep.
Okay. All right. Sorry, everybody. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to Saddlebrook School District's virtual forum on our bond referendum. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tony Violetti. I'm the superintendent of our schools. And here to start us up is our Board of Ed President, Mike Accomando. You're on, Mike.
Okay, sorry, I had myself muted. I apologize. Let me just fix this real quick. Sorry, guys. Okay, on behalf of the Board of Education, thank you all for being here tonight. I've lived in Saddlebrook for just about 15 years and I'm proud to be raising my 2 children here. I'm excited to see the enthusiasm about the December 13th bond referendum. Tonight is an opportunity to hear directly from our district advisors, board administration, and teachers. These experts will discuss what the bond proposal could mean for the future of our school and community. There will be plenty of time for questions, and for those who want to learn even more, we'll host a presentation and building tours this Saturday. Check it out. I'll now turn it back to Ms. Violetti to get us started.
Thanks, Mike. All right, everybody. So I am Tony. I'm going to be the moderator tonight. And before our panelists share their expertise on our bond referendum and answer your questions, we're just going to go over a couple of housekeeping items. So for any question that you have, please go ahead and type the questions into our Zoom chat. Your questions will then be directed to the appropriate panelist, and we'll get to as many questions as we can before we end around 8 o'clock tonight. If we don't get to your question, we'll definitely follow up with the response by email. So we are going to save our chat. We just want to make sure we are respectful of everyone's time. This forum is being recorded and it can be watched later on our district's bond referendum website. That website is www.sbpsnj. That stands for Saddlebrook Public Schools, New Jersey. So sbpsnj.org/referendum. Okay, speaking of our bond referendum website, it is an excellent source for learning about our December 13th bond referendum. The website does have frequently asked questions. There's an FAQ part, there's an overview of the projects, and there's voting information. You'll also find financial resources. There's a link to check the assessed value of your home. And there's also a link that will show our senior citizens how to apply for the senior tax freeze. So again, please visit our referendum website. There's a ton of information on there. I'm going to get started by talking about what led our district to this point, to the point that we're at today. So our state has imposed mandates, and these mandates have changed the way that we educate our children. And quite frankly, the district is in need of more space. We are proposing upgrades, and these upgrades do align with our strategic plan that we worked through last year. These improvements are designed to meet modern standards for safety and security, allow our students to thrive in the classroom and on the athletic field, and provide the type of programs and special services needed to educate all of our children. So you may have heard people in town speak of a referendum and or a bond referendum. This is a bond referendum. A bond referendum is a vote in which the school district asks the community for permission to sell bonds to finance large-scale projects. This financial strategy, what it does is it helps spread the cost of the construction projects over a period of time, much like when a homeowner uses a home equity loan to make improvements. It also enables us, the district, to access state aid to offset the cost of these proposed projects. So that's close to $5 million that can only be invested in Saddlebrook if we have voter approval for the bond referendum. So that means that when voters head to the polls on December 13th, or you can fill out or voters can fill out their mail-in ballot in advance, that you'll see 3 questions on the ballot. So now we're going to explain what are in these 3 questions, all the projects that are included. So we're going to start with the projects, and we're going to direct those questions to our district architects. We have with us Anthony Gianfrancaro and Matthew Gianfrancaro. So go ahead.
Great, thank you. Matt, I'm going to let you take over at this point.
Okay, thank you, Tony. So the bond referendum is divided into 3 questions, and the goals of question 1 are twofold. First, it is to create safe spaces for academics and athletics for the students and staff of Saddlebrook. And The goal of question 1 is also to address critical infrastructure upgrades amongst the district, and with a focus of improving safety and security throughout the district. So the first portion of question 1 is constructing a new middle school addition on the back of the current high school middle school. This will serve grades 6 through 8, and it will provide them with space for expanded programs and support services to help support the 6th through 8th grade students. Also in question 1 is to convert the existing athletic field on the high school, middle school campus to a synthetic turf field to include field lighting. This will provide a safer and more consistent playing surface for the athletes of multiple sports and age groups throughout the district. Also in question 1 is a partial roof replacement at the high school, middle school building, as well as a new security office at the front of the high school, as well as some restroom renovations at the high school, middle school building. Also in question 1 at Washington Elementary School is to renovate the 4 classrooms on the 2nd floor. The intention is to convert these into pre-kindergarten classrooms. This will help to eliminate the current pre-kindergarten wait list, and it will also help to generate revenue for the district in the form of tuition. Also, Washington Elementary School is a proposed new elevator in order to provide ADA compliance to the new classrooms on the 2nd floor, as well as ceiling and lighting upgrades for corridors on both floors, and lastly, a new security window in the main office. Also at Helen I. Smith Elementary School, included in question 1, is the renovation of 2 classrooms in order to relocate the media center from the existing lower floor location up to the main floor, as well as a new security window in the main office. Lastly, included in question 1 are security upgrades to the main office at Long Memorial Elementary School. With that, I think I will pass it to Emily.
Thank you, Matthew. Excuse me. I'm Emily Takach, and I teach 5th and 6th grade at Long Elementary School. So teaching 5th and 6th grade at an elementary school setting, I'm able to truly see just how much 6th grade students would benefit from an addition dedicated to their needs. First off, the social and academic needs of a 5th grader versus a 6th grader are very different. The elementary school setting gives 5th graders everything they need, and it allows them to learn in a calm and nurturing environment where they feel safe and they find comfort in the familiar. It's where they belong. But our 6th graders, they need more. They need to be able to spread their little falcon wings and fly. They need more space to move about the room and the building, more time to socialize, lockers, nice big tables to sit at, more opportunities for extracurricular activities, and a more authentic feeling of independence. And besides the fact that our 6th graders don't fully fit into the elementary school, they are also not ready to go to high school. Out of about 80 school districts in Bergen County, only 9, including Saddlebrook, still have grades 7 through 12 in the same building. We all know there is a huge difference between middle school and high school students, academically and emotionally. Incoming students often struggle with an increase in social and emotional concerns that sometimes overshadow their academics. Our middle school students need a way to learn study skills, time management, and to learn how to navigate this new social situation in a similar but separate setting, and then blossom into independent and resilient young people who are truly prepared to rock high school and the future, which is what our strategic planning showed is what we want for them. The current setup is it's not providing our students with a separate space to do this. So that's where this addition comes in. Adding on to this, New Jersey student learning standards are grouped grades 6 through 8, meaning that 6th graders use an entirely different curriculum than the other elementary school grades. Teachers in the elementary school receive training to stay up to date on current best practices for elementary school students. Meanwhile, the middle school provides training in best practice for middle school students. On top of that, most of our textbooks in the elementary school stop at grade 5. So then a different series is often purchased for grade 6. Then they go off to grade 7 in middle school, where a whole different resource and instructional strategy is being used. With 6th grade teachers being in a separate building, well, actually 4 separate buildings, if you count all the elementary schools, it really doesn't allow for an easy articulation to provide a consistent scope and sequence. As a result, students don't have the opportunity to truly build upon their prior knowledge because so many are learning different programs through different strategies of instructions. So that's what I have to say about our need for a middle school. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration.
Thank you, Emily. Megan Johnson, you're up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Megan Johnson, and I am also a teacher in Saddlebrook. I teach 7th through 12th grade in the middle school, and I am a special education teacher. So I agree 100% with Emily that this is a huge need. First off, right, it would benefit our students in more ways than one, right? We need to be able to serve all our students, not just a small group. So as a special ed teacher, I have experienced where I could not find a classroom to privately teach a student in need. So some of IEPs might say that, you have to remove a student from that general class to take a test. And then you're trying to struggle to find space. And because there's so many special ed students and other, not necessarily just learning disability, but students who just need a place to calm down, we don't have that anymore. We're growing, and which is a great thing. We want our students to be together. So I hope that I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. But we want our students to succeed. And in order to do that, we need more space. So as I said, I'm a special ed teacher. I realize many students in Saddlebrook are being sent out of district. And for this purpose, if we have more space, we can bring them back. And that's going to save us a lot of money. Plus, we want them to be integrated with our students. We want our gen ed students and our special ed students, our ABA students to all be together. 45 Saddlebrook children attend nearby school districts for special education. So if we can bring them back in, that would allow them to socialize with their peers, attend school functions, come to our athletic events, and just feel part of a school community. The district pays $3,644,000 in tuition and transportation for these students. This figure does not include aids, therapies, and additional needs. These are things that we can bring back into our buildings and also create that community that we want our students all to have. Besides better serving our special education students in their hometown schools, the additions and these program expansions would save some of the costs in educating our children outside the school district. So when you go to vote on December 13th, keep these ideas in mind that we want all our students to feel at home in Saddlebrook. Thank you.
Thank you. I just also want to thank Megan and Emily for volunteering their time this evening. They are not getting paid extra for this, so I appreciate it. I'm also I also just want to say, I'm just going to piggyback off of that for a little bit and just say that, not only would we be able to bring students back? Shall it be warranted and shall it work for those students? But we're also able not to send students out if we're able to keep them here. And when you send a child out of district, it impacts their entire family. So being able to keep our special education students in district and not sending them out is just a win-win across the board. We teach inclusivity a lot, and we tell our students to be kind. We tell our students to include everybody, but actually having a their special education peers with them every day interacting is really the way to teach acceptance. And that's, one of our goals in education. So I just wanted to piggyback off of that. Thank you very much. Anthony or Matt, what are some other projects in the upcoming bond referendum?
Sure, Matt, you want to
Sure.
continue with that?
The goal of question 2 of the bond referendum is to continue to address the critical infrastructure upgrades and updates that are needed throughout the district. This will include roof replacements at all 5 locations. It will also include ceiling and lighting upgrades throughout the district at Franklin Elementary, Helen I, and this high school, middle school. It will also include a window curtain wall replacement for the windows facing the courtyard of the high school, middle school building. It will also include hallway floor replacements at Franklin Elementary School. And lastly, it will include window and door replacements across the district. So question 2 is to further address the infrastructure upgrades that are needed throughout the district. Question 3 is focused on the future of the Saddlebrook district. It focuses on a second synthetic turf field at the high school, middle school campus. This will provide a safe and consistent playing surface for sports such as lacrosse, soccer, and field hockey, as well as allow space for the football and band teams to practice. And this will also include field lighting as well. Lastly, as part of question 3, there are upgrades and renovations that are needed at the Coolidge building. These will include interior restorations, including a new elevator, as well as renovations to create and provide a professional learning lab and offices for the district. Tony, I will pass it back to you.
Thank you very much. I believe Mr. Iannello, Chris, you are up next.
I am. I would like to say thank you for everybody to taking the time to come out tonight and educate yourself about this referendum. As you can see, a lot of people are very involved and very passionate about putting this all together. Me being the supervisor of athletics, you can understand how excited I am to finally get possibly some turf fields for our kids to play on. One of our grass fields are very outdated. The uneven surfaces, the weeds that end up portraying by the time the mid-season comes across, it really takes a toll on not only our athletes, but on the game itself. That artificial turf will let us play and practice on our fields regardless of the weather conditions. It will, not only get our athletes and our teams out on there to practice on the same fields that they play on, it will help our phys ed classes be able to get outside and use it, throughout the course of the day. The one thing is I don't have to worry about or monitor who's going to be using it when. There are often times we share our facilities with the recreation department, and depending on the forecast may determine on whether or not we may be able to play a game on that field. So again, that becomes a real convenience for our kids and our parents to know that our schedule is pretty much made, and unless barring lightning and thunder, pretty much our conditions on our field is going to be able to handle any weather conditions thrown at us. So that's a big part. Other than that, I think it really will help us maintain our property values. And I think that one of the things that everybody always asks is, what does the field look like? We would like to have it open to the community. We would have 2 artificial turf fields right next to each other. which will ensure our athletes to be able to not only leave school and walk basically right outside and have their fields right at their convenience. So, I mean, I can't talk enough about how excited our kids are and about everybody that, you know, we talk about, hey, we're going to get this turf field, because going from town to town and almost, I'm going to say 90% of the teams that are in our conference right now and in Bergen County, you know, we're a little bit behind. So I want to catch up, and I want to get our teams on those same nice fields that everybody else is playing on.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so that's lots of good points that you made there, maintaining the grass field and drainage issues. Now, the drainage issue question is definitely one that I've been receiving a lot of. So I'm going to ask our architects to elaborate more on how these drainage issues will be addressed with our new turf fields and the addition to our building. So I don't know if this is the same question
Sure.
or not. At the same time, if we can answer a question that did come in tonight, what happens if the design team can't provide a design that will allow for proper drainage systems for flooding of the new turf field?
Okay, thank you very much. I know this is a very, very big concern of the entire community. One thing I want everyone to understand in the public is that in order to construct a building addition and a turf field and parking or whatever we're going to do on this site, we must obtain the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection approvals. We cannot build without going to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So what we have already started the process, and what we need to show the Department of Environmental Protection is that we have a proper stormwater plan, okay, and that we will not increase any volume on the site. So let me explain what that means. It's if you had a balloon, okay, that was filled with air, and you pushed in on one side and it popped out on the other, everything has to remain equal. So if we build something on one side of the field and we create volume that we're increasing, we have to take it away someplace else. So one of the first things we're going to do is lower the crown on the existing grass field inside the track. Okay, and what that will do is it'll take volume away. So when the rains come, we will not be pushing any storm water off onto anybody else's property. Okay, we will have a detention facility filled with a couple feet of stone underneath that ball field, so that when it rains, today a lot of it runs off. It will go into the ground, it'll percolate into the ground, and it will relieve the property at a rate that is no larger than what leaves the property today. Okay, we have to show those calculations. We will show those in order to construct this project. And I know it is a very big concern, and I just want everyone to know the same thing was done when we did the last addition to the high school. We got a DEP approval. We showed all the calculations to show there was no increase in volume. And again, I know it's a big concern, and it should be a big concern for the community. I know this area has a tendency of flooding, and we have every intention of making this just as good, if not better, than what it is today.
Thank you, Anthony. All right, we are going to switch gears. So we're going to talk about finances now. So tonight with us, we have financial advisor Robbie Campora. We have our business administrator, Ray Karate, and bond counsel, Everett Johnson. So thank you for being with us this evening. They are going to speak on how much these projects cost and how much the state will pay.
Thank you. If I can go first. My job is to structure the repayment of the bonds to project for the school district what the tax impact will be. And when you think about repaying bonds, we need to decide on what the useful life is of the improvements that are being done. So for question one, the larger of the three questions, we're assuming that we're going to repay the bonds over 25 years. The other two questions for the turf fields and the other renovations, we have a 20-year repayment. Again, that's based on the useful life. You're not going to borrow money for something for a longer term than you really know that you can use it for. I guess Ray is going to talk about the actual tax impact, and then I can talk a little more about projections for interest rates, et cetera.
Thanks, Robbie.
Yes, thanks, Robbie. I'm Ray Karate, Business Administrator. The products that we they're broken into three questions on the ballot. The first question is for 48.9 million. The second is for 5 million. And the third is for $4.7 million. The total of all these three questions is 58.6 million. The bond is structured in a way so that question one must pass for questions 2 or 3 to pass. If all three are approved by the voters, the district will receive nearly $5 million in state aid, reducing the impact on the local tax bills. I'll turn it over to Everett.
Good evening. My name is Everett Johnson. I am a bond attorney representing Willis, Coleman and Spitzer. And we will be assisting the board with the legal process and authorizing the issuance of the bonds and walking the board through the whole entire process. And with regards to bonds, obviously the first step would be to approve the referendum. And so, as Ray mentioned, there is state aid that will be available for the project, but only if the project is approved by the majority of voters voting on election day. All the money that will be coming from state aid is not being funded locally. It's coming from the state, from various taxpayer taxes received by the state DOE. And once approved, certain eligible projects, such as our project, is available for state aid. So assuming that we have a positive vote on a referendum, we will be receiving state aid related to this project.
Okay, thanks, Everett. So what will be the tax impact on the community? The owner of an average assessed home in Saddlebrook at $407,800 can expect to pay a net tax impact of $281.85 per year if all three questions pass. Turn it back over to Robbie.
Yes, thank you. So the district has debt service that they've been paying off for a number of years. And after this year, the debt service is decreasing. This year, it's decreasing on average about $130, and then it decreases to zero in 2030. So that's the existing debt for bonds that were already sold. Again, there's a big drop from 2023 to 24. The school district is in their fiscal year 23 right now. So when I say there's a drop this year, after this year, when they're going to be working on their budget next year, there's a drop. And we structured the tax impact to basically take up the slack of that, those drops in the existing debt. A number of school districts around the state are doing the same thing. A number of districts 20 years ago, 25 years ago, issued bonds and are now trying to do improvements to try to keep the tax at level or increase reasonably. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to talk about the interest rates now or not. I guess I'll let Megan talk and then I can come back and talk about the interest rates.
I just want everyone to know I'm also a realtor, and some people get confused when you're handling your value of your home. So when you're talking about assessed value, that is not the actual, like what you would sell your house for. So your assessed value is always lower. And on our referendum website, we do have a link for you to get your exact assessed value. And if anybody's having trouble, I'd be more than happy to help you with that. Thank you.
Thanks. I can just talk for a minute about interest rates. I mentioned the two different terms. We assumed a 4.5% interest rate for the 25-year term for the larger of the questions. Everyone knows interest rates are going up. And I think that that's a good, reasonable interest rate to project because we won't be issuing the bonds until sometime in 2023. So 4.5% is what we anticipated for the 25-year issue. And we sold bonds this week for another school district in New Jersey for 25 years, and the rate that we achieved was a 4.06%. So I feel very comfortable that the rates that we have here is a cushion. Now, I don't like to be low and assume something that's too low when we're making these presentations to the public. And I do feel comfortable that that rate is comfortable. The other rate for 20 years we have assumed is a 4.25%. So 4.25 for 20 and 4.5 for 25 years. We had a bond sale yesterday for 20 and the rate was a 383. That's a big spread from 383 to 425, but we do these projections 6 months in advance. The Fed was and is increasing interest rates. So I feel very comfortable here with these projections. And when we sell the bonds, we sell them on a competitive basis. Once the referendum's approved, we get a bond rating from Standard & Poor's, Everett's office and my office, and the district's auditors do all of the disclosure documents to go out and sell these bonds competitively. It's a competitive sale. It must be done that way in New Jersey. And we will get the best interest rate. New Jersey bonds are highly attractive to all of the big banks. The sales we had this past week, we had 9 and 6 bidders respectively on the 25 and 20-year sales that we had. So there's no doubt we're going to get competitive rates when we do sell these bonds. Just one final thing I want to mention, because we all have mortgages and we know about refinancing, and people are afraid because rates are going up now. These bonds will have a repayment option, a refinancing option. So just like your home mortgage, if rates go down and we sell the bonds at 4.5%, and the rates then go down to 3.5%. After about 6 years, we can refinance these bonds. So the district will take advantage. In fact, they have to refinance if they can achieve a certain level of savings. The state requires them to refinance. I think that's it. I'd be happy to answer questions later on.
Thank you, Robbie. Everett.
Yeah, picking back a little bit on what Robbie just mentioned, assuming that the referendum is approved, the next step would obviously be the issuance of the debt, whereby the board would adopt resolution authorizing the debt to be issued. And as Robbie mentioned, we would sell the debt on a competitive basis, which would entail a disclosure document being drafted by myself, by Robbie, by the district, that will be sent out to investors who invest in bonds. And it's sent to a number of different banks. And on a particular date, we say, we're going to sell these bonds on this date. On that date, they will then submit bids. The lowest bidder will receive a true interest cost, will receive the bid. So that's what she means by competitive. For those who may or may not be familiar with this process, it's merely just putting it out in a particular date and saying whoever gives us the best rate, will be awarded the bond. It's not somebody that we know ahead of time. It's literally geared so that we have the best opportunity to receive the lowest rate, which obviously is beneficial to all of the taxpayers. A common question is, whether we can spend. Suppose there's an overage. Well, we can only borrow the amount authorized in the referendum. The referendum, authorizes, a question what I think was $48 million. We can't borrow $52 million. We're only authorized to borrow what you approve in the referendum and no more. If there is excess proceeds left over, we just can't take that money and use it for other school projects. It's not a bait and switch. We have to get approval to do that as well. And so we can only borrow what you guys approve, but we can only spend the money on what's also approved by the voters. And I think that's an important note.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we have some questions regarding the financial details. If you haven't asked a question, remember, go ahead and use the chat. I see everyone's using it, so it's working well, which is good. All right, our first question, and I'm not going to direct them, just please, if you're able to answer, I appreciate your support. The first question is, why doesn't the increase in taxes in town cover the work that is required at the schools? Someone on the financial team able to assist?
The town has a separate tax levy. The town to run the town and municipal government has a separate tax levy than the school district tax levy. That's the way our laws and towns are set up in New Jersey. So it's two separate budgets, two separate tax levies.
Thank you, Robbie.
Mhm.
The next question is, what will the operating cost be to staff the building, such as custodians and a nurse, plus utilities, insurance, and other expenses beyond paying for the building?
I can answer some of that. Some of the operational costs for utilities, custodial supplies, copier expenses to get this building up and running. I calculate about $152,000 to $172,000 will be added to the general budget. Now, the general budget operates within a 2% tax levy cap. So just like we are now, that's as much as we could raise the taxes for the residents in Saddlebrook. So that all has to be accounted for in our operational budget. We can't go ask the taxpayers for any additional monies. We have to stay within that budget cap.
Thank you. Also, Mr. Karati, has the administration looked into grants for security upgrades as an alternative to making it part of the referendum?
We haven't looked at any specific other grants other than the state aid that's being awarded to us.
Okay. I understand that the schools need upgrades, but why this amount? Trying to see what the exact question got. I'm gonna go back to that one. So the tax increase per year is for how many years?
Question 1, it was projected for a 25-year repayment. Question 2 is a 20-year repayment. So we talk about the tax impact as the average increase in taxes. So it doesn't continue to go up for 20 years. Once you have that average, that's it for the 25, I'm sorry, for the first question, and 20 years for the second two.
Okay. And I'll just go back to that question. I can answer part of it, that we receive state aid based on renovations, not new construction. So a lot of some of what we are doing does qualify us for the state aid as far as these projects go. And then the rest of that answer, I suppose, would just be the need that we're seeing as a district. What if project costs are under budget? Will any money left over be reallocated into a different line item within the board?
I believe that and I'm going to let Everett chime in on this, but anything left over has to go back to pay the debt on the school. Any bond proceeds that are left at the end of the project, when all the bills are paid, goes back to paying the debt service on the bonds.
Yes, that is accurate. That's an authorized use to pay down debt on the bonds, which is obviously will save the taxpayers money.
Right.
If there's a follow-up referendum question to reallocate funds, that might be acceptable as well, but you just can't unilaterally decide I have excess money left over. I want to use that money for another school project or for operational costs even. We can only use the amount of money for exactly what was authorized in the referendum or the pay down debt service.
And in fact, if I could add to that, back in the 2000, was asked a few times, 2001, 2004 referendum, there were a few dollars left over, I think $70,000 or $80,000, and that was put back, like Everett said, back to reducing the debt in one of the fiscal years.
Thank you. Okay, so we also have questions. I think that those are all the financial questions. We also have some questions on other topics, so we're going to answer as many of these as we can. The first question is, are these projects going to be placed on a public bid?
Absolutely. Any project that we do, if the referendum were to pass, we put together plans and specifications, and every project, because of using public funds, will go out to public bid. We will prepare plans and specifications, we'll advertise, and we will accept bids, and it will be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder.
Thank you. Also, for you, Mr. Giancaffaro, what is the time frame for completion of these renovations?
Certain projects, if this were to pass in December, there's certain projects we're going to try to get done actually the first summer. Okay, so some things will be done. Other things will be done in the summer of 24. Obviously, the addition will occur over a 2-year period. And right now we are projecting taking occupancy of that building in September of 2026.
Thank you. Okay, there are calls at the pro level of sports to step away from using turf because of the increased non-contact injuries. Why does the district believe turf is a safe option for our students? Mr. Ianello.
Well, I think one of the things that the pros are trying to agree on is to get the same type of surface at all the stadiums. Again, I don't know how many injuries that we are coming across at the high school level based off of non-contact injuries due to turf, but it has been proven and known to be a safe surface to be playing on. Like I said, it would really help in the conditions that our field is in with the uneven playing surfaces and that part of the maintenance of the field is very difficult. So, I guess it is definitely a concern, but I'm not necessarily concerned that our kids are going to be injured because of the field.
Thank you. Also on turf fields need significant maintenance 10 years out. How will the district absorb the cost of turf going forward?
Well, I know that we have maintenance plans that help maintain the longevity of the turf, and the more that you maintain, the more you groom it, the longer that it's projected to last. But yes, it is going to necessarily be something that we do project to replace in the 12 to 15 year span of the longevity of what it lasts.
Thank you. Excuse me. The next question, how many extra classes for IEPs and ESLs will be required? What's the evidence that all this new building space will be needed to accommodate these new classes? So IEPs are individual education plans for our special education students, and ESL is English as a second language for our English language learners. In my Board of Ed presentation, I explained to the community that there are caps on special education classrooms. So each special education classroom, depending upon what it is, there's only a certain number of students that are permitted. So if it's an autism class, you're only permitted 4 to 6 students with the classroom aide. Preschool is 1 to 8 students with a classroom aide, 9 to 12 with 2 classroom aides. An LLD classroom, which is a learning or language disabilities, 9 to 12 students. Resource room in elementary, you're capped at 9 with an aide. Resource room secondary, you're capped at 9 with an aide. You also cannot exceed 3 years, so you cannot have a first grader with a sixth grader. And then in-class support, which we have lots of in districts, you're capped at 8 students in a classroom for in-class support services and 10 students secondary, which secondary is grades 6 to 12. So as far as how many extra classes for IEPs, it really would depend on the need of the student. So that's a tricky one to answer because every student, that it's an individualized education plan. So it's based upon what that student needs. So we definitely would need extra classes. It's hard to have a specific number for that. And the same with ESLs because the student has to qualify for ESL. So when a student comes in from another district, they get there's a home language survey that they complete. And on that home language survey, if they do not have English as their primary language, then we complete an assessment. If they are assessed to be able to qualify for ESL services, then they take the WIDA assessment, this official assessment that kind of places exactly where the student is in their level of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And then that determines the placement in ESL, and they cannot exit ESL until they receive a 4.5 on that same assessment. So there are certain parameters that we adhere to within our ESL and IEP. So it's difficult to say how many more classrooms, but I could say that we have an increase in ESL population, especially this year. We have somewhere to the effect of 40 additional ESL students this year than last year. We also have an increase in our IEP students as well. So there is an increase in district, but it would be difficult to say the exact number. If we bring students back to our district, would we have the resources in district to support them educationally, not just with space? So the resources in district to support them educationally, not just with space. So right now we have a good number of special education teachers that do have the resources. I'm trying to think about specifically what this question is asking. Let me go back to that one. Will our sixth grade teachers be able to continue teaching that grade if they are not middle school certified? So the Board of Education, the New Jersey Board of Education does approve qualified elementary teachers to receive an additional endorsement for teaching middle school subject areas. We actually do have some teachers that already have that endorsement, or already have a certificate in a content area. So we would have to take a look at our entire staff and determine where each staff member would be best placed. Why do we need to replace the roofs? Someone asked, wasn't the high school roof just replaced? Mr. Karate, do you want to speak on that?
So yes, I mean, you did a great presentation. If anyone wants to go look at it. Back to our last board meeting, you had a visual up there showing all the roof areas and what years they were replaced. We have a lot of roof areas. Back in 2014, we did a fair amount of them, but it wasn't all of them. The ones we want to replace now are approaching their 20-year life, or the ones back in that 2004, 2005 referendum, all the additions onto the buildings, the auxiliary gym here. That's the areas that we're doing for this project.
Okay. Why do we need new building space for new classes? Why can't we partition existing classrooms? Do one of the teachers that live this every day, do you want to speak to this?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you for this question, because I have lived this. And unfortunately, when you're in a classroom that only has a partition, you hear every single thing that the other teacher and the other students are saying and doing. And sometimes that's really distracting to your students when you're trying to get them focused on a lesson or taking an exam, especially if the other teacher is playing like a learning video or something. There's no way to control the volume, and we'll be calling each other, be like, can you please quiet them down? They can't focus. And, the students are even saying like, Ms. Johnson, I can't do it. Like, this is too loud. I can't hear, I can't concentrate. So that's not a conducive learning environment. Partitions do not deflect sound. So I do not think that that's the answer that we need to go in if this doesn't pass. Like, partitions are not going to help us at this time.
Thank you. And when you tour our elementary buildings, you'll see, when you look at Helen I. Smith School as one of the building tours this Saturday, you will see that we have partitions. We have partitions in many classrooms, actually, and that is part of the issue. I see that a person clarified their question. So, do Saddlebrook schools have the resources and programs to support out-of-district students who will return to the district in this proposal? The reason they go out of district is just because of space, ? So we do. We actually have a preschool disabled classrooms, and we have a preschool ABA classroom. We have 2 ABA classrooms at Helen I. Smith School, and we opened up an ABA classroom at Long Memorial School 2 years ago, I want to say. And this year also, we opened up an ABA/MD, multiple disability classroom at Franklin School. We also last school year started a middle school, high school ABA/MD classroom. And this year we opened up an additional middle school, high school ABA/MD ABA classroom. So we do have the programs in our district, and yes, they're capped. So at this point, we don't have additional space for additional students. Okay. How can you guarantee the property area being considered won't flood? This area floods with simple rainstorms, not to mention tropical storms and hurricanes.
Yes, I'll take that question. And I saw somebody said something else in a comment that I can't say it better than that person did. We are going to guarantee to the DEP that we are not going to make it worse. Okay. There are floods that have occurred, whether it was Irene, whether it was Ida. Floods occur and they're not going to stop happening. Okay. I cannot stop the flooding in the entire town. Okay. But what we can guarantee is that we will not make the situation any worse on this property than it is today. And just the opposite, we hope to make it a little better. Will it solve the problem for the entire town? No, it won't. Obviously, it won't. Okay, but we will make the situation on this property no worse, if not better than it is today. by adding underground detention storage, basin, whatever it may require.
Thank you.
You're
Are you allowing only taxpayers to vote? It should only be fair that the only ones voting should be those that own property.
I mean, you can only vote if you live in town. Because they're voting on the poll, the election polls, right? That they would vote for a regular election.
Correct.
Yeah.
think
So you
the
can
question
only
was-
vote in town. Go
I
ahead,
think
Mike.
they were talking
sorry.
about renters also. Which they're registered voters, they should have a right to vote.
Yeah, registered, all registered voters.
Okay. All right. What happens if the bids come in over budget?
Sure, if the bids come over budget, as was mentioned earlier, we cannot spend more than we asked for in the referendum. We will have to go back and look at possible redesign or reconfiguring something in order to bring the cost down to a number that is within the referendum amount. We cannot spend more money than what is voted on and approved by the taxpayers.
Thank you.
And actually, if I may add, I mean, you went over this the other night at our board meeting, but Saddlebrook experienced this back in 2001, went out to referendum for roughly $22 million. That was rejected. Went out a year later with I'd say significantly less vote. A ballot question was about roughly $18 million. That passed, did the bids, which doing all the drawings and everything takes, could take 9 months to 12 months. And by that time, the costs had increased. The bids went out and they came in over the $18 million. So in January 2004, I went to the voters again and I'd asked for almost $6 million and that passed. So they were back up to the same number that was originally asked. And the less work was done because of the cuts that were made and the increased costs. So that's what, so Saddlebrook did experience that. And it does happen.
Thank you. I skipped over a question, so I'm sorry. Let me go back to it. It said, do we have empirical data that suggests this investment will have a significant impact on the success of students and increased education? So yes, we actually did a lot of research on the benefits of a middle school. There's definitely a lot of research out there. I can also tell you that through our experiences and what I shared at our board meeting was that the research does show students in grade 6 are developmentally ready for middle school, academically, mentally, socially. So right now in elementary school, our 6th graders are made to walk in a straight line, to be silent in the hallway. They're treated like elementary students. They don't have electives. They go to gym twice a week instead of every day. So they're treated like a K-5 student. Yet at the same time in our world today, everything's kind of decreasing. Everything's getting younger and younger, right? So in 6th grade, they're having boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. They're talking about sex. They're talking about relationship things. They're using language that would be inappropriate for a younger child to hear in the hallway. So there are situations such as that. Our middle school does, middle schools offer electives. They offer extracurricular activities. They offer clubs. So there's a lot more for our students that are more appropriate for grade 6 as well. Okay. I was told that until around 1992, Franklin, Smith, Long, and Washington schools were all K-6 buildings. From my understanding, that was when they closed Smith due to asbestos. If the buildings the district currently has is utilized correctly, including Washington School, would the district need this new building? So in my opinion, yes. I saw somewhere else, someone mentioned about Washington School being a middle school. And if you look at a middle school today and what that entails, you have your media center lab, you have your gymnasium, you have your cafeteria, you have your STEAM room, you have your science labs, you have your art lab. Like there's a lot more that it wouldn't fit in Washington School. And that's not to mention all the other state mandates that we have. So wanted to make sure we talked about that, see if I'm missing anything. Okay, I'm gonna go on to a question. So we're taking your questions and some of them are very similar, so we're grouping them together. But if by chance we're not answering your question by the end, please email me. Has Saddlebrook's population grown to necessitate a new middle school? So no, we did do a demographic study as well, and the population of Saddlebrook has really not changed significantly, but the way we educate our children and serve our children has. So, you know, everyone's talking about bringing programs back to district, but the fact of the matter is right now we're having teachers share classrooms and students are stuck together. So we have, you know, this aviation program with the flight simulator and drones, and it's in the back of a biology classroom and it's all squished together. There's just not a lot of space. We have, you know, some of the mandated services that I'm talking about include math basic skills, reading basic skills, ESL for English language learners. Each building has school counselors, child study team members. You're required to have a school psychologist, a learning consultant, LDTC, a social worker, a dyslexia interventionist, which I was in one of the buildings the other day, and the dyslexia interventionist is in the hallway outside the elevator. Speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and then all our special education classrooms that are capped. So there are a lot more mandates, and that's when those are specifically what we're talking about when we're saying that more space is needed. You know, the other thing is we're talking about, sorry, Megan, we're talking about adding, you know, programs, and we'd love to offer our high school students programs that would keep them at our high school instead of going to Bergen Tech or something like that. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, we would love to have a culinary arts lab, which is akin to what home economics was back in the day, or, you know, engineering, which is akin to wood shop. You know, we'd love to bring those programs back. And the fact of the matter is we don't have any space for that right now. Go ahead, Megan, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I just also want to say, in addition to like all those state mandates, the children deserve that privacy when they're receiving these services. Like I would be so mortified if I had to sit in the middle of a hallway and show that my speech might not be accurately sounding like everyone else, right? And children feel that. Children get embarrassed. I mean, as adults, we get embarrassed. So to give that space to them and that privacy, I think is extremely important.
Thank you. Why are turf fields combined with school additions instead of being made a separate question? So I'll start, and if someone else wants to hop on in. So there was a lot of research that the committee did on bond referendum questions. And the research really showed that when a turf field, and you could look it up, when a turf field question is on its own, it very rarely does get passed. And we actually looked at surrounding districts to see, and that was what we found. Will any of these funds go towards surveillance camera security around our schools and parks? Mr. Karate, I'm not used to speaking this much.
Sorry, Ms. Violetti. So we have a lot of security cameras in and out of our buildings currently and around our grounds and the playgrounds. We've been adding cameras here or there over the years. We have a pretty good system. The police officers in town comment that our system, the cameras are pretty good, and so do our SLEOs in our buildings. The middle school will have cameras as well. Well, we don't control the town parks, but I think we're pretty covered here with cameras and a security system with our district schools.
Thank you. Okay, someone also, I saw somewhere, so I just want to make sure we address it, about reconfiguring the schools in different ways. The committee did, I mean, we have been talking about this with our, committee within the Board of Education, and we did discuss reconfiguring some of the schools. So we did talk about making Smith School the middle school, and maybe making Washington preschool kindergarten, and then doing different grade levels across the buildings. And at the end, it was decided that this would be the best fit for the town moving forward. If the state or federal government is mandating that schools provide special education services, why aren't they paying more for those services? That's a great question. All right, so we're required by law to provide these services and special education services. And, you know, thankfully, because our students need it, it benefits our students and it gives them access to equal education. So every year, Saddlebrook and other school districts must find ways to fund these services without additional funding from either the state or the federal government, and also within the 2% cap on the tax levy. It's an issue that school districts in New Jersey continue to advocate for in our conversations with elected officials. The state actually calculates aid based on a percentage of special education students that they deem appropriate. So for Saddlebrook, this percentage is 15.9%. We're currently at 19.7%. And that's not to fully fund, it's to provide some aid, some additional funding. So we're over the percentage and we therefore don't receive nearly as much as we need to in order to fund these services. Okay. Would a new middle school addition impact existing parking? One of the architects, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. The existing parking will not be touched at the existing site now, and we are adding some additional parking. I think we're adding about 20 new stalls. So it's not going to affect the parking.
Thank you. Can we raise funding revenues through other ways, like renting out schools for dance competitions or other private activities, evening schools, etc.? I know, Ray, you and I just spoke about renting out our schools. Why don't you share a little bit?
Sure. We're not a large district. I mean, my own daughter danced, and we go around to a lot of schools. They have auditoriums 2, 3 times the size of ours that can hold a lot of people. We do rent it out for 2, 3 small dance competitions or dance companies over the last several years. It doesn't generate a lot of money. Most of our buildings are used by us and all the rec departments, so we don't have a lot of revenue generating. Now with the field being done, there's a chance for that to be rented out possibly. But we do what we could do. I mean, our buildings are used to play practices for months and has their you know, their play in March. So there's not a lot of time for the buildings to be rented out, but we do the best we could.
Thank you. Would these projects increase the number of students we would accommodate in public preschool? Yes. So one question is renovating the upstairs of Washington School. So right now at Washington School, we have the ABA preschool classroom, and then we have preschool 3 disabled and preschool 4. We offer half day and full day. So we have, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4 preschool classes, and then a part-time preschool class. So we have 5 combined preschool, general, and special education. And then we have our ABA classroom that's capped at 6 students. So having the upstairs would give us 4 more larger classrooms that we'd be able to utilize. So right now we have, as of today, 26 students are on the waiting list for preschool at Washington School. So we would be able to accommodate those students. Let's see, how much has the enrollment increased year by year over the last 10 years? Has a survey been done to project what the possible increases will be? Can we, let me see. All right, so we have looked at the enrollment year after year. And Mr. Crotty, is that part of our demographic study? Do they look specifically at students? I forget. Or just town population?
No, they looked at, they did a report on ours and projected it out, and it was relatively flat.
Right, I thought so. I can say that from last year, we are up approximately 90 students across the district. So last year we had 17, we're up to 1795, I believe, as of the other day. So we definitely have, you know, an increase this past year, but that's not really the reason why we're even looking for this. It's more of the state mandates and all the partitions we already have in our current buildings and the teaching that's occurring in some hallways. So that is more of a reason as to why we even began to look at this project. Okay, how could these improvements impact teacher recruitment and retention? So I will start, and then if any of the teachers want to hop in. And my thought right now is walking around the middle school, high school, I would say that teachers are unhappy with switching classrooms. So they're constantly walking around and they don't have a spot to call home. So that does just add to some frustration of teachers for sure. And they're also not always able to teach what they're passionate about. And not because they're not certified, just because we don't have the classroom for that. So that would be another reason I would say. Megan or Emily, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that in terms of teacher retention, I mean, if we're talking about sixth grade in a middle school, sixth grade in elementary school, there's only a few of us sixth graders in elementary school, sixth grade teachers in elementary school. I don't know if it has to do with teacher retention, but it's a struggle sometimes. Because what you were saying before, like these kids need time to socialize. They need time to be their age. And in the elementary school setting, we need to keep them quiet in the hallways. We need to. The little kids get distracted very easily. And that it's hard. So I would just say that I would, in teaching all the other grades and now teaching sixth grades, there's definitely a different with like behavior management, and it's definitely much harder. So I could say that in this environment, it's more difficult than it would be in an environment where the kids had a little bit more freedom. I guess I could say that.
Right. And I think also the vertical articulation for our middle school teachers. So our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers being a unit and not being on their own and being able to, it would benefit our students because they're in the same building and they can talk to one another and communicate with one another about what's best for the student. So, and a lot of middle schools do have teams for that reason. So that goes into a whole nother thing. Okay.
Yeah. And definitely, with that said, like when the consultants come to train for that age level, the middle school consultants go to the middle school and the elementary age consultants go to the elementary school. So just getting the right training for that age level would be better to be in the same building as well.
Thank you. Does the district plan to hire more staff for the new middle school? So we already have started to try to separate our 7th and 8th graders from our high school students this past year. So we do have a middle school principal and a secretary to the middle school principal. So we have created a separate administrative staff for the middle school. We definitely do need to hire other non-teaching staff. So, we need an additional counselor. We don't want one counselor for 3 grades. So we definitely would need another middle school counselor, another nurse. Let's say, counselor, maybe a part-time PE teacher, music teacher, and custodians. We're thinking about 3 custodians and a vice principal. So those are the positions that we believe that we do need. And we're actually working on putting these into our annual operating budget. So we're planning ahead and we're anticipating being able to do so through our annual operating budget.
And if I may add, Ms. Violetti, that if this question hopefully passes in December of 22, we're in the 22-23 school year, and we'll start building the 23-24 school year. We will have 4 budget cycles, 4 budget years to add in the staff, to build in the staff, the additional supplies and utility costs for this school that would open in September of 26.
Thank you. Okay. What types of services are mandated and how does Saddlebrook School District provide those services? I think I answered that one. So I spoke about all the services that are mandated by the state. I can also talk about how we do send students out of district for special education because we don't have the space. And we mentioned this before, but I'll reiterate that, you want your child to be able to attend their school in district with their siblings, with their neighbors, if they're able to. Right now, we actually have students that attend Smith School for a specific program, a special ed program, but they have siblings at Franklin or Long School. So we do have several families that have students in multiple K-6 buildings for that reason. So it would be great to offer those programs in every building. And that's what we're trying to push for. That's why we started opening these other special ed classrooms in all of our buildings. That was something that we're really trying to get in place. Let's see, we also pay, substantial tuitions. Out of district tuition is a lot, plus the transportation to send our special education students to these out of district schools. So I think I answered that question before.
Ms. Violetti,
Yes.
Would it be something that the district would be interested in looking at if we had this referendum pass where we can charge other districts for allowing students to use our programs? If we had the manpower?
Yes, absolutely. So that is, we send students, we have students that go to other public schools that have the proper program as well, because you are mandated to give that, like I said, it's an individualized education plan. So you're mandated to provide the least restrictive environment for that student. And if we don't have that program for that student, we are required to send them out of district. So, and that it could be a private school or it could be another public school that happens to have that program. So yes, to answer your question, if another public school has a child that needs one of the programs that we have and we happen to have space, then yes, we charge tuition to that district. Okay. Just to clarify, you're asking for all or nothing when it comes to the questions. If number one doesn't pass, do the other two fail regardless of the number of votes they get?
Yeah, so the way it's worded, questions 2 and 3 need question 1 to pass. But question 1 could pass and question 2 could pass and 3 could fail. Or 1 could pass and 3 could, and 1 and 3 could pass, but 2 could fail. But it needs question 1 in order for the other 2 to move on.
Thank you. How would turf actually benefit students? What additional opportunities would it open up?
Well,
Well, go ahead.
one thing turf is going to do, and I find, we've done these in many, many districts. When you have a turf field, there's no downtime on the field. When you have a grass field, you have to let the field rest. Number one. Number two, if it's extremely wet and it rains real heavy, especially at the beginning of the spring season, you have to close the field because it's too wet and you're going to damage the field. When you have a turf field, I don't care how much it rains, the next day, or not even the next day, the next hour you're on the field. So you can get a lot more use out of the field by having turf. And what that does is it allows you to have multiple games. You could have a game at 3 o'clock and a game at 5 o'clock. You could allow the band to practice at 6 o'clock, and you just get so much more use out of a turf field than you get out of a grass field.
Not to mention, if we added the lights to that, nothing really brings out a community and the kids and the teachers and the staff more than a Friday night football game. I mean, we're one of the very few Saturday day games. And honestly, we're competing on a Saturday with so many other things that happen in town. Usually our soccer teams are playing, our track teams are running, and our student involvement is minimal. So you almost have to hope that there's nothing else going on a Saturday so that our whole student body can come to a Saturday afternoon game. Whereas to a school that holds Friday nights games, if you've ever been to one, you can say that the attendance is far more than it is on a Saturday. So I could just imagine, I can hear the kids talking about it, making plans, what they're doing, going to, it's just so much more. And it brings, I think, the whole community together as well.
I agree. And if you have children who have gone to a Friday night game, it's definitely an entirely different experience. So it's definitely very neat. Can you vote by mail in this election? Absolutely. You can check your vote by mail status by contacting the office of the Bergen County Clerk. If you're not signed up to vote by mail, then you can submit an application by Tuesday, December 6th. And what will happen is you'll receive a vote by mail ballot at your home, and it must be postmarked for return by December 13th, which is the date of our election. And that information is also on our referendum website as well. Okay, when will these projects be completed? Do games get played during construction? And how would the timeline impact June 2024 graduation? A couple questions put together, but why don't we start with when will these projects be completed?
Well, I think we went through that. Some of them are going to be completed the summer of 23. Some will get finished on the summer of 24. Other project, as I said earlier, the addition will be a multi-year project, and that we are projecting a September of 26 opening. As far as the field, what we would do, hopefully, again, we've done fields in the summer where we've asked, maybe the school if they could put graduation someplace else to give us a head start. We've done it where we've started the day after graduation, and we've asked if you could have the first 2 or 3 games played away so that it gives a little bit more time. But we have done it. It's tight, but we have done it where we've done the fields during the summer.
And then do games get played during construction? And how would the
Well,
timeline impact June 2024 graduation?
Right. Well, obviously, we can't play a game while the field's being constructed. But again, that's why we try to do it over the summer. And as far as graduation, we have to coordinate that with the district.
And if we knew ahead of time, my scheduling for all the fall sport teams can be arranged where the first half of my schedule is played on the road and the second half of the schedule is played home. So, depending on the timeline of what we're working with and how long it'll take, the athletic director world will be happy to help us accommodate our games to make sure that we get them in where we're not going to get shorted amount games played or not qualify for a state tournament or anything like that.
Thank you. Okay. What if the project costs are higher than the district's estimates?
Again, I think we answered that earlier. We cannot spend more than has been approved in the referendum. Can't say that enough times. Cannot spend more than what the voters approved. If our bids come in higher, the first thing we do is we go back and we either redesign or value engineer things in order to bring the project within budget. And that's what we have to do. We cannot spend more than what is approved by the taxpayers.
Thank you. If the referendum passed and the pre-K rooms are renovated, will the district provide free pre-K rather than tuition based? And then there's a PEA grant. So as far as tuition for preschool, so as far as I'm aware, districts do have tuition-based preschool unless they were, it used to be considered an Abbott district. I forget what the term is now, but unless they receive funding, additional funding based upon their financial status of their town. That being said, if the governor does push for universal preschool across the state, then yes, absolutely, it would be free preschool. And as far as that grant, we did have our preschool principal attend 1 or 2 webinars about that grant, and it was not for us. I don't have the details as to why it was not for us, but her and I did debrief afterwards. I would have to go back to my notes. When and if the construction goes to bid, would there be consideration of financial incentive for the general contractor for completion of the project on time and under budget?
Well, first of all, we will have liquidated damage clauses in the contract. That we always do, no matter what the size of the contract is. As far as an incentive clause, we'd have to check with the board attorney on writing that contract, whether or not we could do that. As far as coming in within budget, we will have an allowance in built into the project, and if there are change orders, which they do happen, we will keep them at a reasonable amount by reviewing them with the contractor, and we always build a contingency in to our bids.
Thank you. Will the field, football, soccer, track meet state requirements to host state events?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. If the middle school and high school are still pretty close together, won't high school and middle school students still bump into each other? No. So the way it's going to work, and somebody else may hop on in, is it is a separate building. So it's adjacent to what would be the high school building. And there will be a door there for staff to use, but it'll be locked on the side of, staff will need to use their fob in order to gain access. But our students will have separate, it's considered a separate building and it's extended off of the current building. So the only part of the current building that we would be using for the middle school building is the auxiliary gym. And that's why it's considered an extension, because we are using that gym. We're going to reline it to be regulation size. And that's going to be the middle school gymnasium. And then it's going to be closed off. So it's not, you're no longer going to be able to access that from the high school building. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yes, we had designed the new addition so that they are two separate buildings. If you need to go from one to the other, you can do that, but you would need a key to do that. Okay, so it would only be a staff member that could do that. A student would not be able to do that. Obviously, it's been all designed with all the proper exiting, okay, for any kind of emergencies. There will be no dead end corridors. Everything will be, meet all the proper codes and standards in order for the safety of all the occupants, both the students and the staff. But they are designed to be two separate buildings. Yes, they will share a wall, but they're two separate buildings. So the middle schoolers and the high schoolers will not commingle during the school day.
Okay. Rutherford is a small district, and they have, for example, a K-2 in one school, a 3-5 in another, and a 6-8 in another. They no longer have K-5. Would something like this work for us? So I did mention this before, but that was something that the committee did talk about at the beginning when we first started discussing the referendum. We didn't start off with the creation of a middle school. So we spoke about our current buildings and kind of realigning the grades to each building. So what the thought of the committee was that it wouldn't work for the community, because parents would have to drop off their kindergarten student in one building, second grade student in another, and a fifth grade student in another. So they weren't too keen on that idea. And that also led to transportation costs as well, traveling across town, the increase of traffic across town. Am I missing anything, Mr. Karate? I know you were part of those discussions as well.
Yes, and would incur busing.
Thank you. Please be more specific as to what will be completed summer 2023, summer 2024, etc. September 2026 for the middle school is nearly 4 years away. Do we really need almost 4 years to build an addition? This seems to be far too long to complete and be ready for students.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I think-
Matt. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take this one.
ahead.
The majority of the majority of the projects outside of the middle school addition will be completed in the summers of 23 and 24. There, a few of the projects may bleed into the summer of 25, but the plan would be to have the projects outside of the addition completed in the first two, if not the first 3 summers. As far as the addition itself, it is going to require about 9 to 12 months to design. If the referendum is to pass, design would start in early of 23, probably January of 2023. And then construction itself, you have to figure on a building of this size about every bit of 18 months, if not 2 years to construct, especially with, the supply chain issues continuing as they are. So you're looking at about 3 years total design and build. So you're looking at possibly early to spring of 2026 if you're starting design in 23. But a safe conservative estimate would be to say that the building would open for the school year starting in 2026.
Thank you. I was just being informed, going back to that preschool grant, that the reason why we didn't qualify, you need a certain % of your students that come from lower income families. That was part of the reason why we didn't qualify for that. Okay, how do we know materials will be available and that supply chain issues will not delay the project?
There you go, Matt. You want to take that?
Well, the reality is we are still dealing with supply chain delays. We're dealing with it every day. We are factoring that into the planning stages. And, as I just said, buildings of this size, if it would typically take 14 to 18 months. We're conservatively planning on closer to 24 months due to, in part, the supply chain issues and delays, which is why we're conservatively saying that the addition would open the fall of 26.
Thank you. And, just as a reminder, we're not able to actively work on our buildings, have construction workers and be able to work on our buildings while the students are in session. So majority of this work does need to happen while the students are not in school. Okay, we are looking to end at 8 o'clock. So let's see if there's any other questions. I think that this is actually a good one to end. So what happens if the referendum does not pass? How will the district meet state mandates and serve student needs? So I'll start if anyone else wants to hop in. We are currently we're meeting the standard, we're meeting all the state mandates. We're just not doing so in the most effective way and what we feel is best for our teachers and our students. So, as far as talking about teacher retention, so we have teachers that don't have an assigned classroom or teachers that are teaching in the hallway or in partitioned rooms, and they're not happy about it. They don't feel like they're fulfilling their responsibility to their students. Teaching profession is very personal, and you treat your students almost as if they're your own children many times. And so teachers a lot of times will feel bad if they feel as if they're not providing the correct services to their student or doing their best with the student. And it's hard to do that with the partitions up, as Megan Johnson had said earlier. So we will continue to do our best. And fortunately for us, Saddlebrook has excellent educators and dedicated teachers and staff that really want to do right by our children. So we're in a good spot with that. And I, for one, I'm lucky to be where I am. So we have a really good team here. Emily or Megan, do you have anything to add to that?
I had something and I just lost it.
I saw that you started talking. That's why.
Yeah, no, I had something, and maybe if Megan has anything, it'll come to me. I just completely.
I
lost
actually
it.
thought you said it perfectly, Tony, because it is how we feel. And just, I'm also the union president, and I hear teachers saying like, it's really hard. We feel bad. We have these kids in the hallway. We have this, and, they just want to feel appreciated, and also that the kids are getting what they deserve, because in reality, we did not become teachers for the paycheck. We became teachers because we love kids. We want to work with them. We want them to succeed. When you watch their faces light up when they finally get something that they've been struggling for, like that makes us feel like we did our job that day. So I just think that they deserve this. I know it's an impact to your pockets, right? And yeah, I can easily say, please vote yes, right? Because I don't live in Saddlebrook. But at the same time, I know as a mom, I would want my children to have the best education possible in the best environment. And in order to do that, we need more space. So please keep thinking of us and your kids. And if you don't have kids in the district, think of your grandkids who will be here eventually. So.
And it just came to me what I was going to say. And I think what I was going to say was kind of what you were saying, Megan, and that if it doesn't pass, like we're still going to teach on, and we're teachers, we make the best of absolutely any situation. Like at Long School right now, we don't have a middle school yet, but we made our own little middle school, and it's not ideal, right? Like there are some hiccups. But we're still gonna do what we have to do and give these kids the best education that we can. But yeah, like if there are ways that you can improve the situation, why not give it a go?
And then also for our district, I know budget-wise, not sending students out of district and keeping them in district, which we've already started to be able to do with some of our new classrooms, it definitely does save the district the money. So if you're not aware, a private school or even a public school that we're sending our special education students to can cost anywhere between $30,000 and $115,000, and then plus transportation, and then plus the aid. So there's definitely cost involved that we're absolutely saving money by having these programs in district. Okay, so it is after 8 o'clock. Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Ms. Violet, if I just may comment on that, you guys had great comments. So I've been here for almost 16 years now, and I've seen what our staff does. When I get out into the schools, I see everybody's, like they said before, making it work, and we will make it work. It's just that we can't keep getting squeezed the way we are. We're turning closets and storage rooms into classrooms and small group instruction rooms. It's very hard. The state allows the budget to increase 2%. That's $650,000. If we don't get any more state aid, we're barely making salaries and benefits. There is no room in our budget to do capital improvements. That's why you'll see every time, the 5 times that districts can go out, there's questions from all over the state of New Jersey. And like they said earlier today, the state has money, let's try to get some of it, or else we're paying 100% of some of these costs. We just need this. We need this for the students. They deserve it. They deserve classrooms for their specific program, and not being in a hallway or in a small room or pulled down the back of the cafeteria. They need fields to play on. We need to do this. I've seen it, and it's painful for me a lot of times when I walk around and we don't have the money to do these improvements. So
Right.
that's just my thoughts.
That's a good point about the storage. So we're actually, like, as far as storage goes in the buildings, when I was principal at Franklin School, we took our storage closets and we converted them into small spaces. So we have a child study team office. And again, it was a storage closet. So there's no windows. There's, it's just a closet. And we have our child study team member has an office down there. The school counselor has an office down there. ESL teaches out of this little closet that has an alarm system in there. So, as you tour the buildings, I invite you, come out Wednesday. We're not touring Franklin. We are touring Washington School. We're touring Helen I. Smith School, and we're touring the middle school, high school. So we're starting with an in-person session, very similar to what we're doing here virtually. That's taking place 11 to 12 at Washington School. It's very similar to what we are discussing tonight. However, the in-person tours, it's open building tours between 12 and 2 on Saturday. So I want to thank
please,
all.
sorry,
Okay.
one more thing. Sorry, I know you want to end it, but please, if you only have a little bit of time on Saturday, I wish you could come to all of it, but if you have a little bit of time, please go to Smith School and go in the lower level and see where the library is. And we've been trying for years to move this out of there. We just don't have the room, but please try to make it to Ellen Smith School and go see the lower level. Thank you.
So thank you to everybody. Thank you to all our presenters for sharing their expertise on our bond referendum. And if you have a question, if we did not get to your question, you can always email referendum 2022@sbpsnj.org. That is also on the referendum website. And you may also, we're saving our chat, so we will do our best to send you an email in response to your question. But if you do not hear from us, please email the referendum 2022@sbpsnj.org, or you can always reach out to me, tvioletti@sbsnj.org, and we will make sure we get back to you. Okay, so remember that referendum website does have the majority of this information, so you can go back to it. There's different pages. If you're viewing it on your mobile phone, then you have to click on the 3 lines in the top right, and that will take you to the different pages. You'll be able to toggle back and forth. So there's FAQ, there's voting, there's financials, there's projects, and you'll find all this information on there. All right, I think that's all I have. So Michael, our Board of Ed President, Mr. Accomando, how about you give us a final send-off? Wrap it up.
Absolutely. First off, I'd like to thank the hosts and the panel, and of course our community for coming out. Appreciate that. And anybody who knows me, I'm so proud to live in this community and excited about what these projects could mean for our schools in the future. I know you guys talked about the field and all, but like they said, imagine going out there and just hearing those horns, those fog horns, and going to the snack stand and getting something to eat. And and then just imagine the kids walking into the school on the first day, a new middle school, and even expanding our pre-K program to even more children. This is something that can be possible. And just remember to go out, vote, and have your voice heard on December 13th. Appreciate it.
Yes, agreed. Thank you. Thank you to everyone in the community that joined us. It was so great to see a large number of people that came out to listen to us, and hopefully we're able to answer all your questions. And, thank you again to our presenters for joining us so late in the evening. Everyone knows this is late for me, and sharing all your views with our community. I appreciate it. I know we took your evening away, and hopefully it was really for a good cause. And thank you to everybody. So have a great night.